For an instant, forget the world's noise and feel the slow flow of time with the small light of these words. The story I'm going to share with you today is this. Served at the table was a rich seafood medley with 15 Alaskan king crab legs, and my 4-year-old daughter picked up just one. At that moment, my mother-in-law slapped her and yelled that I was a classless creature. My husband coldly uttered 2 words, disappear. I didn't make a scene. I simply made a phone call that brought the Peterson family to bankruptcy. And that night, the family mansion crumbled into infernal chaos. An enormous Lenox ceramic platter, larger than a human face, with 15 steamed king crab legs and a rich seafood bisque, was placed on the table by the maid, releasing a fragrant steam. The deep red shells glistened as if lacquered with oil, and a thick, aromatic white wine and saffron sauce coated the meaty crustacean tails. Tender potatoes and confit bell peppers, which had absorbed all the flavor of the stew, were mixed into the broth. Its overwhelming aroma instantly filled the entire dining room. Today was the Peterson family's weekly Sunday lunch, a ritual that had to be observed no matter what, a rule imposed by the matriarch, Mrs. Patricia Peterson to, as she put it, strengthen family bonds. The long, ornate imperial-style dining table was covered with a white linen tablecloth, impeccably ironed, and the silver cutlery gleamed coldly under the light of the crystal chandelier overhead. Besides the main course, there were all sorts of delicate appetizers in the center, but everyone's gaze was tacitly fixed on the king crab legs. I was sitting at one end of the long table. Beside me was my daughter, Lily, who had just turned 4. My husband, Robert Peterson, was to the right of his mother, at the head of the table, his head bowed, staring intently at his cell phone. The screen's light illuminated his expressionless face with a bluish tint. Mrs. Patricia Peterson presided over the table like a queen on her throne. She wore a dark green velvet dress by a famous designer. Her hair was pulled back, without a single strand out of place, and the corners of her lips habitually drooped. With her characteristic critical gaze, she surveyed the entire table like a sovereign inspecting her territory. Lily, still small, was seated in a high chair. Her short legs swung in the air. Captivated by the appetizing color of the seafood medley, the little girl blinked her big eyes and whispered in my ear, "Mommy, those crab legs look so good." My heart melted. I stroked her head. "Do you want one, my Lily? Do you want Mommy to get you one?" According to the Peterson household rules, no person of lower status could touch the food before the elders began to eat, especially such a precious delicacy. Normally, everyone waited for my mother-in-law to symbolically take a bite or give permission to start. But seeing my daughter's pleading look and knowing there were 15 king crab legs on the table, enough for everyone to have 2 with some left over, a spirit of rebellion, accumulated after years of oppression, awakened within me. Why did my daughter have to wait for others' permission to eat in her own home? I took a deep breath and deliberately ignored the furious glare that seemed to come from my mother-in-law's direction. Carefully, using the serving tongs, I took a medium-sized crab leg from the edge of the platter and placed it on the small plate in front of Lily to avoid being reprimanded. I warned my daughter in a low voice, "Be good, Lily. Eat slowly. Be careful with the shell." Lily nodded docilely and extended her small hands to try to pick up the crab leg, which was still a bit large for her. She managed to grasp it successfully, and a sweet, satisfied smile spread across her face. Then she withdrew her hand and began to curiously study how she should eat it without touching any of the other crab legs on the platter. The whole process lasted only a few seconds. At most, I expected my mother-in-law's disapproval or a couple of sarcastic comments. I had gotten used to that over the years. A few words for me were nothing if Lily could eat, but I didn't expect this. Asterisk, splat. Asterisk, a clear, sharp sound of a slap resonated, tearing through the silence of the dining room, where only the faint clinking of cutlery could be heard. Everyone flinched at the sudden sound. I jerked my head up. I saw Mrs. Patricia Peterson abruptly stand up from her place at the head of the table. Her movement was so fast that she knocked over the wine glass next to her. The red wine quickly spread across the white linen tablecloth, like blood. Her face was pale, and her features were distorted by extreme rage. Her normally avaricious expression, now seemed to spit fire as she glared at Lily. And my daughter Lily, on her left cheek, white and soft, had a red and swollen handprint, clear and vivid. The little girl was completely stunned. The crab leg she held fell onto the plate with a clatter. She remained paralyzed for a couple of seconds, and then, as if just feeling the burning pain, her small lips puckered, and she burst into loud sobs, a cry that seemed to fill the universe. Thick tears rolled down her cheeks. "And you still have the nerve to cry." Patricia's shrill voice drowned out the little girl's crying. Her fingers, painted with bright red nail polish, almost touched Lily's nose. "Lowborn, a rootless creature. What the devil is wrong with you? The elders haven't even touched the food, and you dare to help yourself. Just like your mother, a starved wretch who doesn't know her place, vulgar to the core." The words "lowborn," a rootless creature, pierced my heart like a poisoned ice dagger. At that instant, the last thread of my sanity, which I had forcibly maintained to preserve a superficial peace, completely snapped. I felt as if all the blood in my body rushed to my head, but my limbs turned to ice. A buzzing resonated in my ears. My daughter's lacerating cries and Patricia's cutting insults mingled, and my mind went blank for a moment. "Madam, what do you think you are doing?" I yelled, standing up almost instinctively. I rose so abruptly that the chair legs scraped the marble floor, producing a deafening noise. In one step, I moved closer to Lily and hugged my daughter, who was trembling and sobbing. The red mark on her cheek burned my eyes and turned into ashes, the last remnant of illusion I had left about this house. What am I doing?" Patricia stood with her hands on her hips, taking a threatening step closer. I could almost feel her saliva splashing on my face. "I'm teaching her manners, Emily. Look what you've turned my granddaughter into. Not a shred of education. You two are dragging the Peterson name through the mud, as my mother always said. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." Trembling with rage, I tightened my embrace around Lily. The little girl sobbed on my chest. Her small body was burning like fire. I lifted my gaze above my imposing mother-in-law's figure and looked at the man who hadn't uttered a single word throughout all this time. My husband, Robert Peterson, was still looking at his cell phone. He hadn't even lifted his head, but on his face, there wasn't a hint of pity for his slapped daughter, nor repulsion for his mother's insults. Only extreme irritation and disgust, as if the noise had bothered him. His gaze was as cold as ice in the middle of winter. It swept over a crying Lily, passed over me, pale and trembling, and finally settled on my face. "Robert," my voice broke. I harbored a millionth part of hope. I expected that, even if for pure appearances, he would say, "Mom, she's just a little girl." That he would maintain at least a semblance of justice, but he didn't. His thin lips moved, articulating clear, cold words. They held no emotion, but they were more destructive than Patricia's slap and insults. He said, "Disappear, disappear." 2 words, he told me to disappear. After his mother slapped my daughter for no reason and called her lowborn, he told me, the mother, to take my humiliated daughter and immediately disappear. Suddenly, I started to laugh. At first, it was a muffled sound coming from the back of my throat, but little by little, it turned into uncontrollable laughter that shook my shoulders. Tears almost sprang to my eyes, but they weren't of sadness. It was an abnormal calm and a feeling of liberation that came after extreme rage and despair. "Enough, Emily. Have you been fooling yourself for the past 5 years? No, you've been fooling yourself. From the day you decided to marry Robert Peterson, you were dead wrong." I stopped laughing and wiped a tear from the corner of my eye with my fingertips. When I lifted my head again, there was no longer any trace of the anger, injustice, or vulnerability from before on my face. Only absolute coldness and calm. I no longer looked at Patricia's repulsive face, but directly met Robert's eyes, full of irritation and contempt. "Robert Peterson," I said, surprisingly serene. "Repeat what you said." Robert seemed surprised that, instead of running to my room crying with the girl, as on so many previous occasions, I dared to defy him. He hesitated for a moment, but then the idea that his authority was being questioned rekindled his anger. "Emily, are you deaf? I said to disappear from here with that noisy kid, out of my sight. Well, very good. I nodded. Even a strange smile appeared on my face. I didn't cry, nor did I beg, nor did I become hysterical as they expected. I didn't even say another word. Simply, slowly and very carefully, I settled Lily, who was crying almost to exhaustion, into a more comfortable position in my arms. And with my other hand, free and exasperating calmness, I took my cell phone from my jeans pocket. It was an old-fashioned smartphone with a worn casing. Compared to Robert's latest foldable model or Patricia's custom phone with diamond inlays, it looked pathetic. I had bought it 3 years ago for my birthday, with money I earned from a part-time job. In the Peterson household, I was a ghost. I didn't have a family credit card, nor a spending limit. Every dollar I spent had to be approved by Patricia, under the pretext of helping me manage our small household's finances. Robert and Patricia looked at my actions with almost overflowing contempt. Patricia, in particular, scoffed. Well, Emily, now you're going to call your miserable family to wine? How pathetic. I tell you, even if you brought the President of the United States himself today, you'll leave this house. You shameless hussy. I ignored her barking, slid my finger across the cold screen, and deftly found a nameless number saved, but already etched into my bones. The area code for that number was from Chicago, a city hundreds of miles away. The phone rang twice, and the call was answered immediately. On the other side, I heard the voice of a middle-aged man, grave and authoritative, but with a nuance of concern. He spoke perfect English. Emily? Hearing that voice, the calm I had forcibly maintained wavered for an instant. I felt a lump in my throat, but immediately suppressed it. I took a deep breath and looked at Robert and Patricia, who were beginning to show a glimpse of uneasiness at my serenity. Then, speaking into the receiver with a clear, cold, and even slightly languid tone, I pronounced each syllable forcefully. Dad, it's me. I paused, and then pronounced the following words clearly. Each syllable resonated like a hammer in the silent dining room. It's time to reel in the net. Bring the Peterson Group to bankruptcy. Right now. The instant I finished speaking, a sepulchral silence took over the dining room. Even Lily, crushed by the anomalous atmosphere, reduced her crying to small sobs. The irritation and anger on Robert's face froze, replaced by an expression of utter disbelief and stupefaction. He stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. Patricia was even more exaggerated. She opened her mouth and eyes, dumbfounded. After a moment, she let out a shrill laugh, as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. Emily, have you gone mad? What fantasies are you having here? Ask your father to ruin the Petersons? But if your father, that starving wretch, has been underground for years, even if he rose from his tomb, he wouldn't have the right to shine our shoes. Bankruptcy. It seems you've lost your mind, Robert. Look at this. This is the woman you insisted on bringing home. She's a complete lunatic. I completely ignored her. On the other end of the phone, my father remained silent for 2 seconds. Then, I heard a slight sigh, almost as if he was suppressing a smile. But behind that, I felt a coldness and determination that controlled everything. Understood. You've suffered a lot, my daughter. Dad is waiting for you at home? Yes, I replied in a low voice and hung up. No more words were needed. Home, what a warm word, and at the same time, so strange. I put the old phone in my pocket, and with Lily in my arms, I left the dining room. My steps were firm, without a hint of doubt or nostalgia. Emily, don't move from there, Patricia screamed after me. Hysterical, don't play mysterious. Listen carefully. If you step out that door today, never think about coming back. Robert finally seemed to snap out of his stupefaction. In its place, a wave of anger, for feeling humiliated, invaded him. He slammed his hand on the table. Emily, what kind of tantrum is this? Apologize to my mother right now. I didn't stop my steps. I crossed the entrance hall, large enough to host a party, and headed for the curved staircase that led to the second floor. My room was there. It wasn't just a guest room where I was temporarily staying. I had to get something. Most importantly, Lily's birth certificate and my ID card. Everything else, The so-called designer clothes and jewelry the Peterson family had bestowed upon me was trash. I wouldn't take a single thing. In my arms, Lily softly moaned. She buried her little face in my neck. Her warm tears wet my skin. My cheek hurts. Grandma is mean. Daddy is mean. Don't cry, my love. Your cheek will stop hurting soon. I kissed her feverish forehead. My voice was softer and firmer than ever. Mommy is going to take you out of here. We're going to Grandpa's house. At Grandpa's house, there are many, many delicious king crab legs. Lily will be able to eat all she wants. No one will ever hit you again. No one will ever insult you again. Really? Lily asked, lifting her tear-streaked face. Really? I said, feeling a sharp pang in my heart as I saw the red mark on her cheek, but my gaze became even sharper. Mommy promises you, from today on, if anyone makes my daughter Lily shed a single tear, Mommy will make that person shed blood. As I climbed the stairs with Lily, I could hear Patricia downstairs, still spewing curses. Robert was probably making a call, irritated, certainly calling my family, that poor and humble home that, in his memory, no one was left to argue with or warn. Unfortunately for him, he would never be able to call that number. The number they knew for my supposed family no longer existed. I quickly returned to that cold and impersonal room. In a simple backpack, I put our essential documents, the small amount of cash, and an anonymous bank card I had hidden under a loose floorboard. This was my last resort, secretly prepared for my daughter and me during these years of humiliation. Then, with Lily in my arms, I silently exited through the back door of the mansion without anyone seeing me. The early summer night breeze was cool on my face. It felt good. The gated community was very well maintained, and at night it was so quiet you could hear the crickets chirping. I turned and looked once more at the luxurious Peterson mansion, brightly lit in the darkness of the night, like a palace, a place I once thought was my home. Now I saw it was no more than a cold, gilded cage. I took out my old cell phone and dialed another number and said only 2 sentences. To the usual place. Come pick me up. 15 minutes later, a black Bentley Mulsanne slid silently like a ghost in the night and stopped in front of me. From the driver's seat, a middle-aged chauffeur in a black suit, white gloves, and a solemn expression stepped out and courteously opened the door for me. Miss Emily, please get in. With Lily already half asleep in my arms, I stooped and sat in the comfortable back seat. The car smoothly exited the gated community, known as the most exclusive in the New York City area. Almost at the same time the car left through the main gate, my cell phone began to vibrate like crazy. The names of Robert Peterson, Patricia Peterson, and even Robert's father, Mr. Richard Peterson, the group president, and even relatives of the Peterson family who normally wouldn't even look at me, appeared alternately on the screen. I pressed the hang-up button. Then the world fell silent. The car did not head to the normal departure terminal of New York City Airport, but entered through a discreet private access road and stopped next to an elegant private jet that gleamed softly in the darkness of the night. Next to the stairs, 2 rows of uniformed cabin crew waited with respectful expressions. Miss Emily, the jet is ready. We can take off for Chicago at any moment, the captain said, bowing. I nodded and climbed the stairs with Lily sleeping in my arms. As the plane began to accelerate down the runway and finally defied gravity to powerfully lift into the night sky, I looked out the window at the brightly lit city receding below. Peterson family. The game is over. The plane sliced through the clouds, flying steadily at 30,000 feet altitude. Outside, only the deep darkness of the night and thin condensation droplets on the window. But inside the cabin, the temperature was spring-like, and only the deep, constant hum of the engines could be heard. Lily slept soundly in my arms. A young, exquisitely trained flight attendant silently approached and offered me a cashmere blanket and a glass of warm milk. Then she brought a first aid kit and, with a delicate touch, applied a cool, soothing ointment over the slap mark on Lily's cheek. The ointment released a subtle, herbal aroma, and its effect was immediate. Lily's furrowed brow, which still contracted even in dreams, slowly relaxed. Would Miss like us to prepare dinner for the young lady? The flight attendant asked in a low voice. Her gaze showed appropriate concern, but no unnecessary curiosity. I shook my head. I had no appetite. I only accepted the warm milk and drank it in gulps. The warm liquid, as it went down my throat, helped to calm my frayed nerves a little. "Just a glass of water, please." "Thank you." "Certainly." One moment, she turned and disappeared in silence. The plane's interior was extremely luxurious, but without ostentation. The leather seats were wide and comfortable. The space was private and serene, compared to that house I had just escaped, full of shrill screams and cold stares. This was another world. I gently stroked Lily's back, looking into the infinite darkness through the window. But my mind couldn't find calm. 5 years. 5 years had passed since I insisted on marrying Robert Peterson, practically breaking off relations with my father, hiding my identity, and stripping myself of all my sharpness to start a supposed normal married life. What kind of life had I led in the Peterson household during those 5 years? Before the marriage, what the Peterson family valued was the pure and attentive image I projected and my background, which, according to their investigations, was of a normal and decent, albeit declining, family. After the marriage, and especially after giving birth to my daughter Lily, everything changed. My mother-in-law, Patricia Peterson, a provincial woman who, with some beauty and much tenacity, married a widower from the Peterson family and took the place of Robert's father's first wife. Her snobbery and innate classism manifested without disguise. She considered me a mere tool to continue the Peterson lineage. When the tool did not produce a male heir, I became useless. Daily verbal oppression and criticism, over trifles, were commonplace. The Peterson household rules were countless, and their interpretation was always in her hands. One day it was my way of dressing, which lacked class and stained the family name. The next day it was my inability to attend to my husband and keep him by my side. Another, my poor education, which turned Lily into a common girl. And Robert Peterson, my wonderful husband, before we married, when he courted me, was incredibly attentive and thoughtful, hiding many of the flaws of a daddy's boy. But after the marriage, especially when he realized that my family could not provide him with the powerful business connections he expected, his attitude changed drastically. He naturally enjoyed everything his status as a Peterson heir gave him, but had no real interest in business, although he was extremely sensitive to appearances. In his mind, a wife should be a beautiful vase, submissive, obedient, presentable in society, capable of serving him and his mother, and of giving him a child. When I gave birth to a daughter, my value decreased, and as prolonged oppression extinguished me, he only showed me coldness and irritation. He always sided with his mother. Every time I argued with Patricia, regardless of who was right, his phrase was always the same. "Mom is old, can't you have a little patience? She's my mother." She suffered a lot to raise me, as if I, Emily Hayes, were a piece of wood without feelings. I cried countless nights in solitude. I tried to dialogue, but only received his indifference and the order not to make a fuss. I yielded again and again. I lowered my expectations again and again, just to give Lily, at least in appearance, a complete family. I agreed to hide my education and my abilities, living as a transparent housewife without economic power. I endured Patricia controlling Lily as if she were her property, instilling her misogynistic ideas. I thought my patience would bring peace, that I could wait until Lily was a little older. Until today, until that crab leg, until that slap on Lily's cheek, until those words low-born, a rootless creature, until Robert's cold disappear. They not only shattered my 4-year-old daughter's self-esteem, but also all the fantasies with which I had deluded myself for the past 5 years. The insults they hurled were not just a humiliation for Lily, but an absolute contempt for me and the family behind me, of which they knew nothing. They told me to disappear. Well, I would disappear, but before I went, I would overturn with my own hands the chessboard on which they felt so powerful. "Miss Emily, your water." The flight attendant placed a glass of room-temperature mineral water on the small table within my reach and, at the same time, informed me in a low voice, "We will land at Chicago Airport in approximately 3 hours. Mr. Arthur has already arranged your pickup." "Understood." I nodded. Mr. Arthur was my father. In Chicago and in much wider circles, he was known as a man who commanded respect and fear. A family of new money, like the Petersons, wasn't even worthy of polishing his shoes. At that time, I was young and rebellious, fed up with the restraints and attention my surname implied. Seeking a supposed true love and freedom, I hid my identity and married Robert Peterson. My father was enraged, and we had a terrible argument. I told him the stupidity that I renounced everything, convinced that I could manage my own life. During these 5 years, I never called him first. My father also seemed to take my decisions seriously and pretended not to worry about me, but I knew. I knew he had always had his best staff protecting me in the shadows. Otherwise, how could an orphan like me have saved that emergency fund without the Petersons noticing? How could I have mobilized a private jet so easily at a critical moment? That old cell phone, that single number was the last and only link between my father and me. He had left me an escape route. He had left me my dignity. He was waiting for me to realize it myself and return on my own. Today I returned in the most forceful way. I took a sip of water. The cold sensation helped clear my thoughts. I took out my cell phone and turned it on. Since the board was already overturned, there was no need to hide anymore. Instantly, an avalanche of messages and missed call notifications flooded the phone, almost freezing it. Messages from Robert. Emily, stop acting crazy and come back right now. Come back and apologize. Answer the phone. What are you doing? I'm warning you before it's too late. If you don't show up in an hour, face the consequences. Mom, what's going on with the company? Who did you get involved with? Answer me. Crazy. Voice messages from Patricia. When I played them, a hysterical scream erupted. Emily, you wretched woman, what have you done to my Robert? They keep calling from the company and at home. You bad omen, come back here right now. Did you run away with someone else to ruin us, didn't you? I knew from the beginning you weren't clean. If you harm my Robert, I swear I won't let you rest even in death. Answer. Answer. You low-born hussy. A message from Richard Peterson, Robert's father. His tone was more restrained, but the anxiety was palpable. Emily, it's Richard. Whatever happened, let's talk as a family. First, come back with Lily. We'll talk face to face. Robert and his mother sometimes have loose tongues. I apologize to you on their behalf, but come back, everything can be negotiated. Even distant Peterson relatives, with whom I had barely exchanged a word, sent me messages, some trying to probe, others blaming me. I looked at the messages with a glacial smile. Now they were in a hurry. Now they were scared. Now we were family. Now they apologized. Too late. I ignored all messages and calls. I looked for the number saved as Mr. Davidson in my contacts and called Mr. Davidson was my father's personal assistant and a man who had watched me grow up, the trusted right-hand man my father relied on most. The phone was answered almost instantly. Miss Emily. Mr. Davidson's voice contained a mixture of emotion and relief. Are you well? And Miss Lily? Our staff has already picked her up, Mr. Davidson. I'm fine. Lily is too. We're on the plane right now. Hearing his familiar voice, I felt a lump in my throat again, but I controlled it. How is my father, Mr. Arthur is well, don't worry. He was very worried about you. Davidson's voice was soft, but firm. Don't fret. Mr. Arthur is personally directing the operation. The first strike should have reached the Peterson family by now. Understood, I replied. I felt no compassion, only the satisfaction of impending revenge. I want to know the current state of the situation. Certainly. Davidson's tone immediately became professional. 2 hours and 17 minutes have passed since your call. The measures taken so far are as follows. First, we mobilized all our contacts and funds to launch a short-selling attack on international currency and futures markets against products related to the Peterson Group's main business. Simultaneously, we spread damaging negative rumors about them. Peterson Group shares fell 30% in the last 30 minutes of the session, triggering a trading halt. Second, several multinational companies that had close collaborations with the Peterson Group have simultaneously declared the suspension or termination of cooperation, citing force majeure or breach of contract by the other party. Third, we notified all banks and financial institutions, with whom we have relationships to completely suspend credit lines to the Peterson Group and begin demanding early repayment of maturing loans. Fourth, the approval processes for several important projects in which the Peterson Group was involved have been suspended indefinitely. Fifth, the IRS and the Antitrust Division should have already received detailed reports on alleged tax evasion crimes and unfair competition practices by the Peterson Group, Davidson explained calmly. Each measure was like a demolishing hammer blow to the foundations of the Petersons' commercial empire. An empire that seemed solid, but was actually full of cracks. According to our intelligence, the Peterson family's current liquid funds barely cover the first bank payment claims, and supplier invoices won't hold out for more than 24 hours. Richard Peterson and Robert's phones must be burning right now. Additionally, we confirmed that Mrs. Patricia Peterson owns numerous overseas assets and luxury goods illegally acquired through Peterson Group funds in her name. This evidence has also been simultaneously submitted to the relevant regulatory bodies. I listened in silence, with a storm inside me. This was absolute power, without the need to shout, without the need for direct confrontation. A single order could reduce a supposedly powerful family to ashes in an instant. Miss Emily, Mr. Arthur asked me to ask you what your final red line is regarding the 3 members of the Peterson family. Davidson's voice became a little graver, asking the key question, my final red line. I looked at Lily sleeping on my lap. I saw the red mark on her cheek, which, though starting to fade, was still visible. I remembered Patricia's slap and insults. I remembered Robert's coldness and his disappear. My gaze completely hardened. Robert Peterson and Patricia Peterson. Make them lose everything. Make them end up in misery, paying the most terrible price for everything they did to Lily during these 5 years, and especially today. As for Richard Peterson, I paused. That man, at least, maintained a semblance of himself. He had even shown, albeit sporadically, some grandfatherly affection towards Lily. Although it was minimal, he didn't deserve total ruin. If he is sensible and cooperates, leave him enough for a basic retirement so he can get out of this circus. But if he insists and resists, let him sink with his wife and son. Understood? Understood, Davidson replied firmly. Mr. Arthur thinks the same. Don't worry, Miss Emily. Everything will be done cleanly. You just have to return home calmly. Mr. Arthur misses you very much. I miss him too, I murmured to myself after hanging up. My father. I hugged Lily a little tighter. The plane flew silently through the night sky. The destination was a true home and a new life. And in the city I left behind, the Peterson family's nightmare had just begun with a bloody prologue written by me. I closed my eyes. I no longer looked at the ceaselessly vibrating missed call notifications. The cabin was silent. Only the faint whisper of the air circulation system could be heard. Lily stirred on my lap, smacked her lips, and continued to sleep. The ointment had worked. The red and swollen mark had almost completely faded, leaving only a faint trace. I adjusted her posture so she could sleep more comfortably. However, my gaze involuntarily shifted to the old cell phone, now silent. Its current calm was proof of the enormous storm raging on the other side. In the end, I couldn't completely suppress the dark impulse to witness their misery with my own eyes. I unlocked the screen, ignoring the hundreds of unread messages and red notifications. I entered a triple password to access a secret application. It was one of the programs Mr. Davidson had forced me to install years ago for security. Besides location tracking and emergency calls, it had a function that allowed me unidirectional access to hidden surveillance cameras installed in some key areas of the Peterson mansion. These cameras were installed by my father through special channels after my marriage. As a precaution, the Peterson family didn't even know of their existence. In the last 5 years, I had never voluntarily opened this application. The mere idea of seeing scenes from that house suffocated me, but today was different. My fingertips trembled slightly. I touched the surveillance screen that connected to the living room and dining room. The first thing that reached my ears was Patricia's almost tearing scream, so sharp it seemed to cut through the screen. Richard, do something. Call someone. Why isn't anyone answering your phone? Are they all dead? The image trembled slightly, but it was clear. The living room, once a symbol of luxury and elegance, was now a chaos. The overturned wine glass had shattered on the carpet. The wine stain looked like a grotesque scar. The cushions of the expensive leather sofa were scattered everywhere, and the ashtray on the table overflowed with cigarette butts. The air seemed thick with the smell of smoke and anxiety. Richard Peterson, my father-in-law, who always cared about his appearance and seemed unflappable, now paced back and forth in the center of the room, like a caged beast. He abruptly pressed his cell phone, held it to his ear, and then nervously pulled it away, hanging up. Groans of suppressed anger escaped his mouth. Nobody is answering. Not the bank director, not the undersecretary of industry, not the main clients either. Their phones are off, or they're busy, or they simply say they can't do anything. What the devil is going on? His suit jacket was carelessly tossed over the back of the sofa, his tie was crooked, and his forehead was beaded with cold sweat. His usual composure and control had vanished. Suddenly, he stopped and looked with bloodshot eyes at Robert, who was sitting on the sofa with a pale face. "Robert, are you sure what you found out? That Emily? Who the hell is she really? Didn't you say her father was dead? That he was just a simple village teacher?" Richard's voice trembled with fear and anger. Robert abruptly raised his head. His hair was disheveled, his gaze lost, and on his attractive face, only bewilderment and defeat remained. He also held a cell phone, and on the screen, the Peterson Group stock chart was in freefall and already black. "I don't know, Dad. I swear I don't know," he cried out in a hoarse voice. "I investigated everything when I met her. She was a normal college student. I even sent someone to her home address. They told me it had been abandoned for years. Her mother died early, and her father's record was clean. He was a high school teacher, retired due to illness a few years ago. How is this possible? How can this happen with a single call?" Suddenly, as if remembering something, he jumped up, ran to Patricia, grabbed her by the shoulders, and shook her like a madman. "Mom, it was you, wasn't it? You treated her too badly behind my back. What did you do to her? What did you say to her? And how did you hit Lily? Tell me, Patricia." Patricia, dazed by her son's shaking, saw her already shattered emotions completely explode. She pushed Robert away and burst into tears. "Me? What did I do? I was just trying to correct that spoiled girl who told her to help herself first. What's wrong with a slap? I'm her grandmother. It's my right to educate her. And that Emily, that vulgar woman, dared to talk back to me. I can't even insult her. Who knew she was such a twisted demon? She pretended to be a little lamb just to devour us. Oh, my misfortune. Why do I have this life?" She screamed, hitting the sofa, which emitted a dull sound. "Educate? You call that educating? You called her low-born mom." Robert's eyes were red with rage. It was as if he was seeing his mother for the first time. "Well, that's it. The company is ruined. Everything is ruined. Are you happy? It's your fault. Both of you." Richard, appearing to redirect his anger towards his wife and son, pointed at Patricia and insulted her. "My fault, Richard, you shameless man. If it wasn't for my family's help back then, do you think you'd be where you are today? Now that there are problems, you blame me? Why don't you blame yourself for your incompetence, unable to properly investigate a woman?" Patricia retorted instantly with acrimony. The fragile facade of their marriage had completely shattered in the face of disaster, leaving only accusations and mutual recriminations. "Enough," Robert shouted. He clutched his head with his hands and collapsed onto the floor, anguished. "What's the use of saying all that now? We have to find Emily. We have to find her. Only she can stop this." At that exact moment, the mansion's doorbell rang urgently and shrilly, followed by loud banging on the door and a murmur of voices. Mr. Peterson, are you there? We're from J.P. Morgan Chase. We need to speak with you urgently about your loans." "Mr. Richard, open the door. We're from Sterling Construction. When do you plan to pay us for the materials?" "Mr. Richard, we're from the court. We have a notification to deliver to you. Debt collectors, suppliers demanding payments, judicial notifications had come in person to their door in the middle of the night." On the screen, The faces of the three Peterson family members turned ashen in an instant. Richard staggered to the window, carefully pulled back a heavy curtain, and peeked out. With a single glance, he recoiled in terror, leaning against the wall and gasping. His face reflected total despair. They came? They're here. There are many cars. Many people, he murmured, his body trembling slightly. Patricia screamed in fear and hid behind the sofa. Robert, as if his bones had been removed, collapsed onto the carpet, staring into space with dead eyes. Call! Robert, quick, call! Emily and beg her. Ask her for forgiveness. Patricia, as if clinging to a last lifeline, peeked her head from behind the sofa and urged her son in a shrill voice, as if awakened by her words. Robert clumsily picked up his cell phone and redialed my number. This time, on the surveillance screen, his incoming call was clearly visible, and on his face, a complex mixture of terror, supplication, and a hint of disbelief. I looked at him coldly. My fingertip paused a second over the answer button, and then, with a light and decisive touch, I pressed the reject button and immediately afterward moved his number to the blocked list. The world fell silent. On the screen, Robert heard the automated voice. The number you have dialed is not assigned or is out of service area. First stunned, and then as if realizing something, his face lost all color. He didn't give up. He called several times again, but the result was the same. Finally, he completely collapsed. Suddenly, he threw his cell phone with all his might against the large television wall. With a crash, the screen shattered, and fragments flew everywhere. Patricia let out an even shriller scream. Robert, like a beast that had lost its reason, with bloodshot eyes, yelled into the air, and perhaps at the surveillance camera that might exist with all his strength. Emily, you be times check, you be times check. I swear you won't get away with this. I won't let you rest even in death. His impotent rage transmitted through the screen, but in me, it only caused cold satisfaction. You won't let me rest? By what right do you say that now? I turned off the surveillance application. I put the phone aside. The cabin was silent again. At the edge of the sky, through the window, a very faint light was already visible. Dawn was about to break. Lily had woken up, rubbing her eyes, sleepy, and asked in a soft voice, "Mommy, where are we going? Is it morning?" I leaned over and kissed her clean forehead. For the first time since escaping the Peterson household, I smiled with genuine sincerity and tenderness. Yes, my love, it's dawn. Soon, we will arrive at a new place. A place where there are only people who love us. No one will ever hurt our Lily again. Are there crab legs there too? Lily asked, blinking her big eyes, remembering the incident. Of course, plenty, and not just crab legs, but a lot of rich, delicious things, I promised, smiling. My heart was at infinite peace. The chaos of the Peterson family, their collapse, and their despair were nothing more than the last and obscure convulsion before dawn. And Lily and I flew towards the true light. The plane gently landed at Chicago Airport's private terminal, precisely as the eastern sky began to turn a milky white. The outside world was enveloped in a slight morning mist, and in the opening dawn, in the distance, the silhouette of the city could be distinguished like a giant awakening from its lethargy. When the plane door opened, a gust of fresh, slightly cold air entered. It was completely different from the oppressive and expensive air freshener-laden atmosphere of the Peterson mansion. I took a deep breath. I hugged Lily tightly, who was still sleeping in my lap, and descended the stairs. The scene on the tarmac surprised me a little. It wasn't as I expected, with just Mr. Davidson alone or a few discreet security guards. In front of me, 2 rows of security guards in dark, tailor-made suits and solemn expressions were perfectly aligned like silent spears. The formation extended to a very discreet-looking black sedan, whose exceptionality a connoisseur would instantly recognize. This imposing presence, silent yet overwhelming, was the symbol of true elite power. Light years away from the ostentation of new money, like the Petersons, and the figure standing at the head of that formation made my eyes well up instantly. It wasn't Mr. Davidson. It was my father. Arthur Hayes wore a dark gray, custom-tailored suit. His posture remained erect. But in the 5 years that had passed, his temples had turned white. Time had etched deeper wrinkles on his face. His eyes, once sharp as a hawk's, now looked at me. In them, a complex mixture of emotions churned: pain, exhaustion, the relief of having recovered what was lost, and a deep, unconfessable guilt. He didn't rush forward, as any father would. He simply stood there in silence, his gaze fixed on Lily and me, as if trying to encompass the lost 5 years in a single glance. Half a step behind him stood Mr. Davidson with his refined appearance, who looked at me with an undeniable smile of relief and affection. I walked towards him, step by step, with Lily in my arms. The ground beneath my feet was firm, but my heart pounded. During these 5 years, I had dreamed countless times of our reunion, but I never imagined I would return under these circumstances, so desolate and, at the same time, so determined. I stopped in front of him. I felt a lump in my throat. The word Dad remained on my lips, unable to escape. It was I who, through my immaturity, had broken his heart. My father's gaze first rested on my face, scrutinizing me for a moment, as if wanting to ascertain my state of mind, searching for any sign of hidden suffering. Then, his gaze shifted to Lily in my arms and stopped at the slap mark, which, though faint, was still visible on my daughter's small cheek. At that instant, I felt the air temperature around me drop sharply. My father's gaze became icy and sharp as glass. It was the terrifying look of someone accustomed to deciding matters of life and death. The look that only appears when what is most sacred to him is touched. The pressure emanating was such that even his trained security guards unconsciously straightened up. He extended his hand, but his movement was extremely gentle. With his fingertips, with an almost imperceptible delicacy, he brushed the red mark on Lily's cheek. His fingers trembled slightly. Who was it? 3 words. His voice was not loud. It even sounded a little hoarse, but it contained a coldness that chilled the blood, as if it had been taken from a freezer. It was not a cry of fury, but the explosive anger it contained made me shiver. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible. Robert Peterson's mother, Patricia Peterson. Because Lily took a crab leg from the platter too soon. I didn't exaggerate. I merely stated the facts. But the facts were cruel enough. My father's jaw muscles tensed. It was a sign he was containing extreme fury. He said nothing. He simply withdrew his hand. When his cold eyes turned back to me, they regained some warmth, but above all, they were filled with deep sadness. "You're home now," he finally said, just those 4 words. He turned around and opened the door to the black sedan. "The little one must be tired. Let's go home first. Has your aunt prepared everything?" "Yes," I replied in a low voice, stooping to sit in the spacious and comfortable back seat. My father got in after me and sat beside me. Mr. Davidson took the co-pilot's seat. The car glided in silence, so smoothly that the movement was barely felt. The landscape passed quickly by the window. The dawn streets, clean and orderly, so different from the hustle and vanity of the city I left behind. Inside the car, silence reigned, broken only by Lily's steady breathing. My father didn't ask me how my life had been for the past 5 years. He didn't question me about the details of the Peterson family. He simply sat in silence, looking out the window, but I knew that his interior was not as calm as it seemed. After a while, he finally seemed to have controlled his emotions and spoke slowly. His voice had regained its usual calm, but with a nuance of tiredness. "You suffered a lot these 5 years." That simple sentence almost made the tears I had suppressed with so much effort overflow. I pressed my lips together and shook my head. "It was my fault," he sighed. His gaze remained unfixed on me, as if talking to himself or for me to hear. "I shouldn't have entered that war of pride with you. I knew that man wasn't a good match, and yet I let you go. If I had been firmer..." "Perhaps. Dad, it's not your fault." I finally regained my voice, though it sounded a little muffled. "I was the one who was too stupid and naive. I didn't listen to your advice. It's the path I chose, and it's a lesson I learned in these 5 years." My father then turned to look at me deeply. In his eyes there was relief, but also pain. From failures one learns to be wiser. Being Arthur Hayes's daughter, you can stand on your own 2 feet. He paused, and his tone became cold. As for the Peterson matter, don't worry about it anymore. I'll take care of cleaning everything up. At that moment, Mr. Davidson, from the front seat, turned at the opportune moment and handed me a thin, modern tablet. The screen was on. Miss Emily, take a look at this first. It's the media buzz from the last few hours. I took the tablet. On the screen, a carefully organized interface showed headlines from major economic portals and trends on social media. Almost all the articles were related to the Peterson family. The words used were incendiary, impactful. Mystery on Wall Street, Peterson Group shares halve overnight. Speculative attack? Breaking news, several multinationals sever ties with Peterson Group. A business empire crumbles. Exclusive. Antitrust Division investigates Peterson Group for alleged accounting fraud. From heaven to hell, the Petersons' nightmare. Creditors swarm their door. The last article was accompanied by a short, somewhat blurry video, but clear enough to recognize the situation. It was the scene I had seen through the surveillance camera. The Peterson mansion's door surrounded. Someone had recorded it, and it was going viral. The comments were a festival of sarcasm. Is this real? The Peterson Group is finished. Good. It was about time those new money types were humbled. They say they messed with the wrong people. Serves them right. That Robert Peterson was always arrogant. Now he's paying for it. Karma exists. The woman screaming in the video is the mother. God help us. What an unsavory family. Justice exists. These unscrupulous people are getting what they deserve. Public opinion was being precisely guided by an invisible and powerful hand, nailing the Peterson family to the pillory of public shame, without giving them the slightest chance to recover. It wasn't just a business blow, it was a social death sentence. All the image and network of contacts the Peterson family had built with so much effort had shattered in a single night. I put the tablet aside. I felt no compassion, only a cold calm. This was the price for enraging my father and hurting his granddaughter. This is just the beginning. A warm-up for public opinion. The real reckoning is yet to come, my father added, as I silenced my thoughts. The first major bank loan is due today at 9 a.m. The Petersons won't be able to pay it. I looked at my watch. It was a little past 6 a.m. Less than 3 hours remained. The countdown to the Peterson family's death knell had begun. The car entered an extremely guarded and serene gated community in the most exclusive area on the outskirts of Chicago. It finally stopped in front of a traditional-style manor, old in appearance, but exuding solidity and lineage. This was my true home. Unlike the Peterson mansion, built with gold and jade, here every blade of grass, every tree, every brick, and every tile breathed true power and the weight of years. Miss Emily, your room is prepared. We also redecorated Miss Lily's playroom in the style she liked when she was little, Mr. Davidson said, getting out of the car to open my door. I stepped out of the car with Lily in my arms. Standing before the familiar yet strangest door of my home, a mixture of emotions flooded me. My father stopped beside me and patted my shoulder. His tone was firm. Take the little one to rest. Leave the rest in my hands. I nodded. With Lily in my arms, I entered the home that could truly protect me from any storm. And at that very moment, in that distant city, the Peterson mansion must have been a living hell. For them, the 9 o'clock chimes would be Judgment Day. My father's office was in the most secluded part of the manor. One had to pass through several tranquil courtyards and corridors to reach it. The door was of heavy walnut wood. Mr. Davidson stopped before it, gestured for me to keep silent, and waited outside. As I pushed the door open, the interior space was much larger than I imagined. 3 of the walls were covered with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, brimming with ordered books and files. A serene scent, a mixture of old paper and fine ink, floated in the air. My father was not sitting behind his large desk, but standing in front of an enormous window that overlooked a meticulously maintained garden. The branches of an old apple tree stretched vigorously. He had his back to me, and in the morning light, his silhouette was outlined, giving him a solitary air. He heard my footsteps, but did not turn immediately. He simply spoke calmly, his voice resonating in the silent office. You came? Yes, Dad. I stopped a short distance away. With his back to me, he slowly turned. In his hands, he held a thin paper envelope. His gaze rested on my face, studying me for a moment, as if evaluating my state. Lily is still sleeping? Yes, deeply. Good. He extended the envelope he held. See this? I took it and opened it. Inside were a few sheets. The first was a screenshot of a financial statement and copies of several key contracts. On them, numbers and impactful clauses were circled with a red pen. This is the real state of the debt of Docentic, the Peterson Group's main subsidiary and its only profitable asset that generates liquidity, along with the loan agreements for its 3 main projects. My father's tone was calm, as if giving the weather report. I gave a subtle hint to their auditor and partners, and everything they had hidden under the rug came to light. My gaze quickly scanned the numbers. The supposedly profitable asset actually had a negative net worth of an astronomical amount. It was kept afloat thanks to complex intercompany transactions and fraudulent contracts, and the loan agreements were so draconian that the moment they had a liquidity problem, the Petersons would lose everything down to their shirts. The bank will demand payment from them at 9 o'clock sharp, the first maturity of a short-term loan of $30 million. The Petersons' available funds, including some shares they just sold in a hurry to get liquidity, do not exceed $5 million. My father approached the desk, picked up his tablet, and slid his finger across the screen a couple of times. A real-time tracking screen appeared. It showed the Peterson Group's stock price constantly fluctuating and economic news headlines. After the previous night's bloodbath, the shares had plummeted again at the opening. Undoubtedly, the selling pressure was massive, and no one was buying. The news headlines were increasingly sensational. Peterson Group may declare insolvency today. Who's behind the mysterious speculative attack? Suppliers protest in front of Peterson Group headquarters. Richard must be in his office right now, tearing his hair out, trying to convince the few shareholders and creditors who still listen to him. My father's voice betrayed no emotion, but it's useless. I've already sent copies of these Docentic documents to their most important creditors and their main competitor. By now, they'll be more nervous than Richard himself. I put down the documents. However, everything was clear in my mind. My father's strategy was not a simple financial attack. He had precisely found the Petersons' Achilles heel and simply pushed a little. Their seemingly solid commercial empire was already rotten from within. It just needed the guy to the right trigger to crumble like a house of cards. And my call yesterday was that trigger. My father opened another video on the screen. It showed a discreet corner of a luxury private booth. Although the lighting was dim, the profiles of 2 men could be distinguished. One was Robert Peterson. The other, surprisingly, was Chad Harrington, the son of a wealthy family he used to socialize with. The video had no sound, but Robert could be seen, with an anxious and almost servile expression, saying something to Chad, gesticulating as if asking him for money or help. Chad, with an expression of feigned helplessness, shrugged or shook his head, but in his eyes, an ill-concealed satisfaction and clear distance could be read. Out with the old, in with the new, my father commented calmly, closing the video. The friends Robert used to go out with at night will now be fleeing from him. And he, who still thinks he can overcome this crisis with his old contacts, naive. I looked at Robert's servile and pathetic image on the screen, compared to the cold and disdainful face that ordered me to disappear the night before. I felt no compassion, only a chilling confirmation. This was the man I was once blindly in love with. His innate weakness and snobbery were shamelessly revealed in the face of a real crisis. How far do you intend to go? I looked up at my father. I knew that with his power he could make the 3 Petersons disappear silently, drowned in debt and misery. He even had more drastic means, but he had chosen to bury them socially, publicly. My father's gaze fixed on me, penetrating, as if reading my mind. That depends on you, Emily. The humiliation you suffered, the harm they did to Lily, what price do you think is fair? I remained silent for a moment. In my mind passed Patricia's slap and insults, Robert's coldness, the red mark on Lily's cheek, and her terrified crying. Make them lose what they value most, I said clearly. My voice was not strong, but it was charged with firm determination. What Robert and Patricia value most is the wealth and status of the Peterson family and their pathetic vanity. So let them lose everything. Let them end up in ruin, so that they too can taste what it's like to be trampled on and despised at will. I want them to spend the rest of their lives tormented by today's nightmare and by regret. As for Richard Peterson, I paused. He was the only one in that house with a shred of decency. He showed a minimum of kindness towards Lily. If he understands the situation and cooperates, he can be given a basic way out to distance himself from this circus. But if he chooses to sink with his wife and son, it will be no one's fault. My father listened to my words, and a nearly imperceptible smile of satisfaction appeared on his face. He nodded. Well thought. Each person is responsible for their actions and their debts. With people like that, keeping them alive, plunged into poverty and suffering, is a much more severe punishment than making them disappear entirely. He approached the desk and pressed the intercom button. Mr. Davidson, proceed as planned. You can now send the personal notice to Richard Peterson. Understood, Mr. Arthur. Davidson's voice was heard through the speaker. I knew that the final judgment on the Peterson family had been dictated. Richard would receive an ultimatum: cut ties and survive or resist to the end. The choice was his. At that precise moment, someone gently knocked on the office door. One of the house staff, with a freshly awakened Lily rubbing her eyes in her arms, stood in the doorway. Miss Emily, Mr. Arthur. The young lady woke up and is looking for her mother. The cold expression on my face melted in an instant. I quickly approached and took Lily. After sleeping, she seemed much more animated. The mark on her cheek was almost invisible. She nestled into my neck and softly called me, Mommy. Then she looked curiously at my father by the window with a little shyness. The stern expression on my father's face also disappeared. He tried to soften his features as much as possible and extended his arms to Lily. His voice was incredibly tender. Lily, come here. Let Grandpa hold you. Lily looked at me. I nodded to encourage her. The little girl hesitated for a moment, but then extended her small arms and let herself be taken by my father. He held her in his arms. His movements were a little clumsy, but in his eyes there was indescribable emotion and affection. He examined Lily's little face closely, especially the cheek that had been hit. Only when he confirmed there was no trace of the injury did he sigh in relief. Lily, are you hungry? Grandpa has prepared a lot of delicious things for you, sweet cakes, and also the Alaskan king crab cakes that your mother loved so much when she was little. My father tried to tempt her with food. Lily's eyes lit up. She asked in a soft voice, Are there crab legs too? My father froze for an instant. Then, understanding, a shadow of pain and anger crossed his eyes, but it was replaced by an even deeper tenderness. Of course, we have all the king crab legs our Lily wants. From now on, at Grandpa's house, Lily can eat whatever she likes. No one will take it away from her, and no one will scold her for it. Seeing this scene, the last shadow of darkness in my heart faded. This was the life and love my daughter deserved. A few weeks later, I received a call. It was the Peterson family's former maid. Miss Emily, is that really you? What joy, she said, sobbing. The Peterson family went bankrupt. You know, I also lost my job, and my son broke his leg at work and is in the hospital. I urgently needed money. So, I went to Mrs. Patricia to ask for the 3-month salary she owed me. But she's a different person. Not only did she not give me the money, but she yelled at me that, because of me, for bringing that seafood medley, the family had been ruined. She called me a bad omen and even tried to hit me. Young Robert stopped her, but he also told me he didn't have a single dollar and even asked me to lend him something. Miss Emily, can you believe this? Me, who was going to collect a debt. Those people have gone crazy. They've lost all shame. I listened in silence, with a disdainful smile. Indeed, without the aura of money and status, the despicable nature of the Peterson mother and son revealed itself in all its crudeness. I sent her double the salary she was owed, with a generous extra for her son's treatment and expenses. It was the most vivid epilogue to their miserable fate. Ballroom of a 5-star hotel in New York City, a charity dinner. I entered the ballroom arm in arm with my father. Walking on the red carpet, I wore a pearly white evening gown, simple yet elegant in cut, and a diamond necklace of subtle brilliance. My hair was styled in a sophisticated bun, and I wore light makeup. I exuded a cold and distinguished nobility. As the project promoter, I went up to the stage to give a speech. I spoke about how education can change the destiny of girls, how small acts of kindness add up to create a powerful force. When I finished, I received warm applause towards the end of the party. There was a small commotion at the ballroom entrance. Mr. Davidson approached my father and whispered something in his ear. I followed his gaze. A familiar figure was being politely, but firmly held back by hotel security. It was Robert Peterson. He wore a crumpled, ill-fitting suit. His hair was disheveled, his eyes sunken, and his face bore the marks of alcohol and poverty. He stood out completely from the elegant people around him. He tried to force his way in, shouting something. His pathetic, miserable, almost deranged appearance attracted a few sideways glances. But most, after a glance of disgust, returned to their conversations. My heart clenched for an instant upon seeing him, but it was immediately replaced by an immense strangeness and complete indifference. The security guards quickly escorted him away. The ballroom instantly regained its usual atmosphere, as if the incident had been nothing more than a small hiccup. I averted my gaze. My expression did not change. I continued my conversation with the president of the Cultural Foundation, who was beside me, smiling as we discussed how to incorporate art education into the project. In my mind, it was as if a small stone had fallen into a calm lake, creating a slight ripple that vanished in an instant. True overcoming, true victory, was not angry revenge. It was being at a height he could never reach, where his miserable figure could no longer cause even the slightest ripple in my heart. To me, he was like an ant, unworthy of even a second glance. The car glided smoothly back home. My cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Mr. Davidson, a single line, matter resolved. He will no longer trouble you. I turned off the screen and closed my eyes. In my heart, there was no euphoria of revenge, but the clarity and serenity that come after overcoming all tribulations. The future was long. I had a daughter to raise, family responsibilities to take on, and a new life to forge. Everything related to the Peterson family, along with that slap and that disappear, had faded into the distance. Like smoke, a new chapter, my new chapter, officially began that night. Thank you all for following. I hope this story sparks your interest in social issues. If it moved you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. Together, let's spread positive energy and protect the light.